problem without addressing the problems of African youth. In the first place, I've argued that we treat the African youth as a problem rather than a resource to develop. In my own opinion, we have to have a clear plan for the African youth, see them as a resource to develop. They are part of this society.
He tried to portray himself as a new leader, to resurrect the AFC. He failed miserably in doing that because we pointed out he was there when the AFC was in the cesspool of corruption and all of that. He tried.
And can you imagine 40 days or so going, it would appear that this man has not, the allegation has not been put to this man as yet. 40 days. The allegation of money laundering and financial impropriety has not been put to Brutus. That is what I am surmising. Because they said that they invited him to go there and he refused the invitation. So yeah, so you got to know, you have to arrest him. Because you have grounds, you're investigating a crime. You arrest him, you caution him, tell him of his rights to refuse.
We were told singularly, take education. So many of us took education. I always tell people my father had a shop, and I don't recall one day telling me I should take over the shop. He always said to me, take education. He saw education as the sole vehicle for emancipation. We now have got to say, take education, but also develop your entrepreneurial skills. Unless we have a large core of people.
Like I eat the Police Discipline Act, Chapter 1701, because I know the Act very well. And there is absolutely no clause in the Act that prevents anyone from questioning Assistant Commissioner Brutus in relation to this allegation of criminal misconduct, money laundering, and financial improprieties. Absolutely no law. Section 5.3 of the Police Act, Section 5.3 of the Police Act says that a rank, if you want to investigate a rank, you have to be, if you want to investigate, and this is a discipline, if you want to investigate under the Police Discipline Act.
These large organizations always want their people who would be subservient to them. And I believe in their own calculations, they understand that if you have on your payroll the leader of a political party that is represented in the National Assembly and has the right to influence policies in relation to the oil and gas sector, that will serve them well.
Children, I can't make nobody live with a wife or live with a lady they didn't like. But in the context of the one-parent family, the male African has to live up to his responsibility and help us to produce families that are sustainable. And so I believe intergenerational preparation is important. We need to prepare this generation to do better than the previous and ask the next generation to do better than the generation before.
Getting to the police welfare fund, you're dealing with the welfare fund too. You're dealing with hundreds of $millions involving the police quartermaster, including the police finance. You're dealing with those are criminal offenses. And also it should be spread to deal with gun license, issuing of a firearm license. And also it should be spread to deal with the missing firearm.
Welcome back to The Flight. Hit that subscription button, buddy, and stay updated with everything that's trending in Guyana and the diaspora. Thanks.
If the basis of development is human resource development, we have to create the conditions for them to get the skills they need to operate in this society. We have to create the conditions for them to get education, etc. And so that human resource development plan. And I give you a practical example. In the report, in the program that I spoke to you about that we did when the first year was launched, we had put in it the development of African Guyanese in the fishing sector. And we had indicated that there is need for the resources and for the training of African Guyanese to be involved in fishing. Of course, it was not implemented, but I always say to people, Forbes Burnham told us years ago that there's no way Guyana should be importing saltfish. I remember saying saltfish is fish, sun, salt, and a little bite to watch it and pick it up when rain coming. That's before we meet the technological level of solar and so. And he went down that road. But you know who are the exporters and the main producers of saltfish today? The very people that criticized Burnham. We did not go in that direction, and therefore it is virtually a sector we are locked out from. And unless we can develop the human resource capabilities and interests, we'll be in problems. I do not believe that we can address the African problem without addressing the problems of African youth. In the first place, I've argued that we treat the African youth as a problem rather than a resource to develop. In my own opinion, we have to have a clear plan for the African youth, see them as a resource to develop. They are part of this society, and the problems they encounter have been created by this society. And unless we engage them as a group of people who we have to help to come out of the problems they have, then we will be failing. Because whether we like it or not, if the African youth isn't with us, we're not likely to succeed. Because a large section of our human resource will be disconnected, used, abused. I mean, whenever I remember that an African took $20 to kill a man, that sends a chill down my spine. And we have got to address these issues. And to address it, I believe that we need to come up with proper leadership training programs for Africans generally and young Africans. Let us not fool ourselves. Many of us here don't even understand the language of the African youth. Unless you train the young people amongst them, improve their consciousness, improve their organizational ability, and get them to work with the African youth, we are in trouble. Because I told a youth forum last night, don't tell me this nonsense about future leaders. To the extent that we don't understand the youth, we have to find youth leaders who are present leaders to help us lead the youth. Failure to do that, we're going down the wrong road. And so I do believe that there is need for the African community to do talent spotting and identify those youth leaders, train them, give them the level of consciousness at the political level, at the economic level, at the socio-cultural level, and allow them to give leadership to their cohort, the youth. And so I see them as a resource to develop. We came through a process in which we were told singularly, take education. So many of us took education. I always tell people my father had a shop, and I don't recall one day telling me I should take over the shop. He always said to me, take education. He saw education as the sole vehicle for emancipation. We now have got to say, take education, but also develop your entrepreneurial skills. Unless we have a large core of people that can create jobs and give African youths jobs, again, we are in deep trouble. And so I would say to you, one of the things that should be part of the program is a proper program of financial literacy and small business development, so that we begin to reorient our young people to understand that they have to move in the direction of business. And therefore, they need to understand financial literacy. They need to understand small business development and do the work that is required to become entrepreneurs. We can return to government tomorrow, and you can have the resources at your disposal. But if you don't train the people to utilize those resources, you will end up crying and not achieving our objectives. And that is why today I'm trying to say to you, let us get to the root of the problems rather than the top of it. And so in approaching the youth, I think at the community level, we have to have a message of saying to African villages, develop sustainable communities. Develop sustainable communities. I never understand and will never understand why, if you want, what they call it, these PVC pipe, if you wanted one of those, what you call it, you got to run to somebody outside of the African community. You should really be able to buy it in the community. So we have got to begin to focus. I am not anti-Chinese, but the Chinese have moved into Plaisance, and I have not changed buying from the people I buy in Plaisance. Because for me, if we are having sustainable businesses in Plaisance, in BV, in Buxton, then the Chinese could come, and if we have the level of consciousness, they will close. Because we are conscious of the fact why we need to produce sustainable communities. And so I think we need to put as an objective the creation of sustainable African communities. If we don't do that, then you're in trouble. Why is it you build it in a village and you can't buy your cement in the village? You can't buy the materials you need. And that, for me, is a critical issue that has to be addressed, this question of sustainable communities. And as we do that, we have to encourage intergenerational preparation. We need to prepare this generation to do better than the generation before us, and encourage that generation coming to work towards giving their children a better life than they would have had. And here is where the family becomes important. We can look at everybody, condemn them, say whatever we want. But if you have an African community in which the men make children and disappear and leave it with the woman, we ourselves are creating conditions for poverty. The statistics will show that children who parent, especially mother and father, look after them, tend to do better than children in one parent family by itself. And unless we understand the importance of both mother and father in the development of a child, then we're in deep trouble. I always tell people of a story in Pleasance where there was this little child that used to always come for assistance, and I was skeptical. But then, after time, and the child come and I said, look, I'll give this child money, give the child money, go to school. One day, I followed in my vehicle the child. And having given him the money, he went straight to St. Gabriel's School. So it was a clear thing of the child wanting to go to school. And then one time when he came, I said, look, I can drop you to school. And I decided I will drop him to school. And I had an empty lunch kit. And I asked him, why would you go to school with an empty lunch kit? And you know what he said? That all the children got a lunch kit. And he would go behind the school with the empty lunch kit. But that's not the bad part of the story. I began to query. And his father was an African Guyanese who every Thursday night on Pleasance Line Top, having a ball, spending the money, but refuses to look after his child. That's the point I want to make. Unless we can get that message into the African Guyanese community, that they need to focus on the family, particularly the children. I can't make nobody live with a wife or live with a lady they didn't like. But in the context of the one-parent family, the male African has to live up to his responsibility and help us to produce families that are sustainable. And so I believe intergenerational preparation is important. We need to prepare this generation to do better than the previous and ask the next generation to do better than the generation before. Now, we cry a lot about land. We cry about land. That's no problem. But we have land that we aren't doing anything about. In fact, I have argued that Africans don't fight enough for the land. We tend to give up our land easier than any other. So I'm saying we need to be able to recognize that land is critical and that we should do everything to ensure we maintain land and we get the land. But land in itself solve the problem. The big problem as I see it, I've already mentioned those about financial literacy, etc., the knowledge. But the big problem as I see it is the question of investment funds for the land. And whatever program we develop, we have to have a clear strategy to develop, to get finances, to help the African Guyanese, not to waste it and pour it down, but prepare them in a way that they can use it and transform the land into real wealth. But that is one of the big tasks before us. And I want to say this. We have got to have a movement of African Guyanese collaboration with Africans in Africa. A lot of times, when we talk about wealth, we seem to forget there are wealthy Africans all across the street. And we tend to believe that the resources can only be mobilized under USA, British this. We have Africans in Africa that if we network with and we establish our genuineness, our ability to be transparent and accountable, we can mobilize resources for the financing of African business in Guyana. And I think we should put it on the agenda. not only Africans in North America, but Africans in Africa. I have recently been engaging Africans in Africa. And when you speak to them, many of them are not knowledgeable of the plight of African Ghanaians. And we have got to take that message to the African community that you have brothers and sisters in other countries that need, that have land, etc., and that there is need for development resources to ensure they develop. I'm saying all that I'm saying to say to you, we need a clear plan, but it demands leadership. Unfortunately for some of us, leadership seems to mean running up and down the street, wrapping up things. And I said this to you. I was one of the
One love, Delta9 family. Welcome back to the flight, and thanks again for flying Delta. Now, what are your views on what the Honorable Leader of the Opposition just had to say? The plan is a great plan, but it's a plan that calls for the involvement of everybody. He's saying everybody got to get involved if you're looking to improve that particular aspect. As every group that's looking to improve themselves, they would first need to have a culture that would foster development and improvement from the root, which is the family. Everyone got to get involved. And it's not just an overnight thing, but it's something that could start tomorrow with a real focused unit. How serious are you? Let's have a conversation about that in the comment section. And right now, we're going to hear from the VP himself as he throws some of those political jabs at two of his biggest opponents right now, allegedly, Mr. Nigel Huge and none other than the owner of Kaichor, Uncle Glenn himself. Let's hear directly from the VP his views as to how they've been behaving recently. Because you know, the VP is going to give you his perspective as to how he feels about these matters. Let me hear directly from the VP.
AFC is irrelevant. Nigel Hughes I believe, has consistently misled the people of Guyana. He tried to portray himself recently as a champion for the cause of a few people, falsely so. He tried to portray himself as a new leader, to resurrect the AFC. He failed miserably in doing that because we pointed out he was there when the AFC was in the cesspool of corruption and all of that. He was still a member of that party. So it is not, we have no doubt that when the elections come, that the people of the country will see through the AFC. It's an attempt to refashion itself and to distance itself from that sordid, dirty period in office and try to, so that's clear. They're not making any waves. Nigel Hughes goes underground and he hands out a couple of bags and takes a couple of pictures and posts them, and they comment on everything under the sun now. He went to Linda and Norton, said, I could have helped them get a better crowd. They had a couple of people there, and that was supposed to be one of their strongholds when they started. That's not the point. The point is that we have now some of the newspapers. The reason I'm talking about it, because I want people to see how a newspaper like the Stabroek News, which claims to be serious, will give an outsized publicity to a man who goes and discovers pit latrines for the first time in the year and talk about pit latrine in an Amerindian community and will not do an editorial about that the PPP initiative has led to 800 projects being done, not financed from the treasury, but money earned through the innovation of this party in government, to do 800 projects in the first year and another 800 projects in those villages. They would not give 3 lines to that in the newspapers, but will give a whole editorial to pit latrines that Nigel used this cover, and they quote him. It is this duplicity that I'm talking about. Not him. We're not worried about the AFC and the others, a political organization. It's about the duplicity of the people who say they're serious about informing the people. A newspaper's job is to inform the people of the country. So they couldn't inform the whole of Guyana about all the positives that took place at the NTC. They only found APA to make a comment. APA is hostile to the PPP, pro-PNC. Tried to block the funds to the Amerindian, but they got a voice. Then Vincent Henry dominated the paper, another PNC MP who got 165 million to distribute. And then the third one was Atu Shao, who eventually signed the opt-in mechanism. He signed it actually as an executive of the NTC, but who is related to Don Hastings, who is another PNC member. 3 pro-PNC outfits, all the whole newspaper covered with that. Not a single word about the PPP has not done anything. Oh, the land policy? Well, the PPP didn't really start this. But they didn't say that the PPP put $10.2 billion behind, the 10.2 million US dollars from money earned from the LCDS behind this initiative. Titled a lot of communities, and APNU discontinued the unit. In fact, dismantled the unit. This is what I'm talking. So when the reader out there, or people who believe that you should read multiple sources to come to the truth, when they read this, then they can listen to my voice saying, what about the other side? Where are the editorials on the things that we're doing to solve transportation problem, or the adaptation measures to deal with climate change? Not a single editorial about that. Not a single editorial about the initiative that is globally recognized, the Forest Initiative. None of those things matter. But the newspaper's role is to inform the public. But it seems as though nothing that the PPP is doing is worthy of informing the public about. Nothing. And that's what I'm going after. Not the AFC. The AFC, we know this. It's the same old Trotman. He's the leader. Trotman was a waste at that time. He still has a ton of things to answer, no matter how much Kiteshore News tries to resurrect them. Kiteshore News is their tool for resurrection now, Kiteshore News, but they have another crazy one there who wants to form a political party. So it's just that, like the WPA now, every day they're in the newspaper. WPA, I can count their members on there's Pam alone, there's Ann alone. I can count their members here, and you would think this is a major political party. This is the leader and 2 other persons, and that's it. But when you look at the coverage they get, it's more than the entire government of Guyana. More than the entire government of Guyana. And the PPP, definitely the PPP don't get anything. Because PPP, they would go back and fabricate everything. You see, like they just attempt to fabricate a connection between me and some fulcrum, which I don't have a clue about.
Dr. Jagier,
that's why I'm dealing with it.
The PNC has been the main, is the main opposition. and is by far the biggest political party, and a party has been in government for a number of years. So they have the ability to mobilize and do things. That being said, is the government looking at the AFC ability to mobilize and their connection with ExxonMobil in light of the fact of Exxon's history in different countries around the world that to some extent destabilize economies to get their way? Is the government aware? We're not making accusations, but is the government cognizant of what's going on?
So my view is that these large organizations always want their people who would be subservient to them. And I believe in their own calculations, they understand that if you have on your payroll the leader of a political party that is represented in the National Assembly and has the right to influence policies in relation to the oil and gas sector, that will serve them well. So that's why they're hanging on to Nigel Hughes. But it's not what Exxon is doing. It's more about Nigel Hughes himself and his commitment. So behind all of the loftiness and everything else, he is just greedy. He wants to keep the job there. But if he becomes president, then he will give up the Exxon job. He can't do it before that. He doesn't want to make the commitment to distance himself. And he has already made it clear. As I said the last time, any leader who says, if the national interest conflicts with that of my client, and my client is an external company, non-Guyanese, then the non-Guyanese company's interests will prevail over all of Guyana and all of our interests collectively. How could you take such a person seriously? You can't even take him seriously. And he hasn't heard the last of us. Next year when we get on the campaign trail, we'll deal with that more.
Dr. Jagdeo, I've asked this question before, and it comes again in light of what I see going on. Kaieteur News reporters come continuously on a weekly basis and ask stupid questions. While the government of Guyana affords Kaieteur News to be the largest recipient of state ads, bear in mind, the news industry has gone to social media.
Yeah.
Why persons, and I gotta speak for myself, persons like Gordon Mosley and others who are on social media are not getting more from government? Government, do you have a share in Kaieteur News?
Do I have a share in Kaieteur News?
Sending money to Kaieteur News. Do you have a share in Kaieteur News?
Well, Glenn Lal was close to me one time in the past. He used to hang around and stuff, so maybe I'm friends and family. So I may have an interest in keeping Kaieteur News going and making money there too. His friends and family paper. So
looking at making a level playing field.
No, but you're absolutely right about one thing. That social media now reaches many more people, a lot of than the newspapers and the others. And it should be time maybe to rethink the advertising budget of the government. Not in a way to stop giving ads to the newspapers, but just let them be more reflective of the reach. One time we tried that and it didn't go so well. But maybe it's time to have a look at it again. Next thing they're going to complain to the Press Association that we are trying to starve them of ads. So it's something that should be considered. I actually think it's a good idea. Or giving more to the social media. But some of the newspapers too, like I think Stabrook and others, they also have a social media presence, an online presence. So even if people don't read them in the form, they reach people. So it should.
So we heard right there what the Honorable VP had to say. Now listen to this. We've learned over time, right, in Guyana and living in other parts of the world as well, that you listen to politicians and just make sure you listen carefully, because allegedly there might be something to it, and allegedly there might be nothing at all to what is said right there. But guess what? Guyanese is not no fools. Just some more exposing going on right now, because whenever the top cop them come around and they got a special case that I see them dealing with presently that is very interesting. Allegedly, there's a big look. Do we hear directly from the top cop themselves and let them tell us right now as to what is going on? Because they say, look, after this, it's no more wondering or asking any questions allegedly. It's clear to see, but then it's clear for us to analyze exactly what's going on right here. You hear directly from Top Cop Slow.
The 19th of August, according to my calculation, it is 40 days since Assistant Commissioner Calvin Brutus, Assistant Commissioner and Attorney at Law, they say years, said that he requested the proceed and leave to facilitate this money laundering and financial impropriety investigation. 40 days. And I saw something recently on social media. Let me read it to you from HGP Nightly News. And it says, as the wide-ranging probe by the Guyana Police Force's Special Organized Crime Unit into alleged corruption and financial improprieties continues, a senior police officer has declined an invitation by the Special Organized Crime Unit to be questioned in relation to his alleged role in the crime. Sources familiar with the investigation have related that the officer on the investigation told Soku ranks via telephone that a specific clause in the Police Discipline Act prevents them from questioning him. He then hung up the phone. Now let me tell you all some story here. Let me analyze this, right? Remember, we start off very early by saying Soku does not have the competence to investigate an allegation of financial impropriety and money laundering against Calvin Brutus. The article didn't mention him, but I mentioned his name because it is there that they are investigating Calvin Brutus, Assistant Commissioner, who was there at the admin. He is being investigated. And these people saying here that they invited him. He had an invitation by the Special Organized Crime Unit, and he declined the investigation. Let me say this. He is within his right to decline any investigation to go to the police place. Let me understand it. They invite you. It's an invitation. And therefore, you can say, no, we are not accepting the invitation. I'm not coming. He is within his rights to do so. But what should be the action thereafter? That is the question. The man decide that he's not coming. Then you are investigating a crime. And therefore, the next step should be for you to find wherever he is and arrest him. The next step is for you to find wherever he is, arrest him, put the allegation to him, caution him, and have him in custody for some time, and then you're going to consider bail. But it would appear that once the man declined the invitation to report to Soku or wherever, they just leave it at that. I'm not aware that anything has been done. And can you imagine 40 days or so going? It would appear that this man has not, the allegation has not been put to this man as yet. 40 days. The allegation of money laundering and financial impropriety has not been put to Brutus. That is what I am surmising. Because they said that they invited him to go there and he refused the invitation. So yeah, so you got to know, you have to arrest him. So you have grounds, you're investigating a crime. You arrest him, you caution him, tell him of his rights to refuse to make any written or oral statement. There, he's in custody, and a decision can be made as to whether he's going to be put on bail, what type of surety is to be lodged, and so on, while he is on bail, or while he's on bail. But they don't do that, And then the next thing, if you can't find where he is, you put out a wanted bulletin as they have done in the past. They put out wanted bulletin for the former head of SOCU, Sidney James. They wanted him for something, and apparently, I don't know if they didn't, if they make attempts to get him or what, but they had a wanted bulletin in the media for the former head of the Special Organized Crime Unit, Special Assistant Commissioner Sidney James. That did that. So what happened to Brutus? Special treatment? This man refused to come. Yeah, as I said, he has a right to do so. But what are you doing? What are you doing in furtherance of this investigation? And again, we have been saying over and over, SOCU does not have the competence to investigate this financial impropriety and money laundering. They don't have. And this is more evidence. Because for today's, and the allegation has not been put to him. As far as I know, it has not been put because their mom, the corporate propaganda unit has not said anything further on this matter. And then the next part, before I bring in Mr. Conway, hear what is people saying. This is what is being reported. Sources familiar with the investigation have related that the officer on the investigation, that is Brutus, told SOCU ranks via telephone that a specific clause in the Police Discipline Act prevents them from questioning him. He then hung up the phone. Let me say this to you all. The older policemen here, CC and all, I'm going to tell you, they used to say like I eat the Police Discipline Act Chapter 1701 because I know the Act very well. And there is absolutely no clause in the Act that prevents anyone from questioning Assistant Commissioner Brutus in relation to this allegation of criminal misconduct, money laundering, and financial improprieties. Absolutely no law. Section 5.3 of the Police Act, Section 5.3 of the Police Act says that a rank, if you want to investigate a rank, you have to be, if you want to investigate, and this is a discipline, if you want to investigate under the Police Discipline Act, and the offenses against discipline are stated from 4A right up to 4Z. They are stated, the offenses, not money laundering, not financial impropriety. Those are criminal acts, so they cannot come under the Police Discipline Act, Chapter 17:01. So therefore, there is nothing preventing. It says if you're investigating a matter of discipline, then the person has to be of the rank of sergeant. And in any event, that person who doing the investigation has to be of a higher rank than the person against whom the allegation is made. So understand it. They're talking there about discipline. They're not talking about a criminal matter. And I've said before, and I wrote on this over the weekend on Facebook, that anyone can investigate a criminal act. Even the last giant constable, providing he has the experience, just using that as an example, can go and question Brutus and investigate any act of a criminal nature. They can investigate it. So this thing, what this man is alleged to have said, that tell them that there's a specific clause in the Police Discipline Act that prevents them from questioning. I want to know, which clause is that? There's no clause that I know of that prevents anyone from questioning him in that. Because let me understand this clearly. If we were to accept that argument that junior rank can investigate, it means in the current composition of the force, the Harlem Assistant Commissioner, the extended squatter, you say they can't be investigated? Because there's nobody senior to them, really. So you're suggesting that if, and even when you have a substantive commissioner and substantive deputy commissioners, you're basically saying that they are above the law? Because if you have deputy commissioners, then the only body who will be senior in rank to the deputy commissioner is the commissioner of police. And therefore you say this eager for this investigating. So the thing doesn't make any sense. And this is coming from a man who will say admitted to the bar. And you know, there's always this distinction whether they are admitted to the bar or whether they are admitted for the bar. I don't know the difference, but I heard that being bandied around. Some admitted to the bar and some admitted for the bar. Y'all decide what it is. But let me bring in Mr. Conway. I have something more to say on this. But let me bring Mr. Conway for him to have his say on this matter. CC, this thing was just read. Where the man declined the invitation, which I say is within his rights to do so. Because you did decline an invitation. And then, but they're saying, telling them that there's some specific clause which prevents them from questioning. Let me hear your take on this, my brother.
Well, the specific clauses, as you mentioned, is if you are dealing with a disciplinary offense, section 4A to Z, that spells out all the offenses. The offenses are stated under section 4A to Z, and it's clear. And I get it at the top of my head. It's every alleged commission of a breach of discipline under this act shall be investigated as soon as practicable by a member of the force not below the rank of a sergeant and of a higher rank than a member of the force who is alleged to have committed the offense. Throw it aside. You're dealing with criminal matters. You're dealing with money laundering. You're dealing with financial irregularities at the police quartermaster store, at the police mess, breakdown, TSU, the college, the SC mess. You're dealing with financial irregularities that involve ranks from the interior, Region 1, Region 7, Region 8, and Region 9, where they're detailed to provide bogus accounts and say the money gain to the police welfare fund. You're dealing with the welfare fund too. You're dealing with hundreds of $millions involving the police quartermaster, including the police finance. You're dealing with those are criminal offenses. And also it should be spread to deal with gun license, issuing of a firearm license. And also it should be spread to deal with the missing firearms that were alleged station. All them things that you gotta deal with. So the nonsense what Bruto's saying, partly within your rights if they're dealing with display, or perhaps if they deal with display. But as long as you're treating it criminally, it not get ranks. You not get ranks not there on there. As you mentioned, a constable or large constable could investigate. And they talk about invite, perhaps they're in this Darren syndrome. Remember they had invited Darren Lal to Coven John police station, allegation of rape and other sexual offenses made against him. They invited him. They know he live in, and they invited him. And since he reached there, according to Pastor Ram, this quarter call and say he sent him on bail. You know? And just like me, they invited me to Suku in relation to display, in relation to what they say, fraud, conspiracy to defraud. So I say, tell me, you're going to tell me in details, what is it you are investigating? And they couldn't tell me. And Special Deputy Superintendent Harvey said, there's what Karambasa must invite you. I said, I turned it down. And he said, well, Karambasa, if you turn down, he must arrest you. And they arrested me. So all they got to do is to arrest Brutus. Arrest him, tell him about the allegations made against him. Arrest him and carry him to the station or carry him to Suku, wherever you want one thing. He got to be arrested. And they know where he live in. And they know if they can't find it, they know his vehicle number. I think he's driving a red X-Trail. I can't remember the number. They know the number. I think he got it written down somewhere. They could find Brutus if they want to, and arrest him. Or if you not find him, put out a wanting bulletin for him.
A natural way to stay ready, baby. 'Cause I'm ready for you, Mr. C. A natural way to stay ready, baby. 'Cause I'm ready.
The ultimate male supplement, men's total wellness formula, packed with essential nutrients for men's health.
She'll call you Mr. C.
So I'm talking about loss and the fact that Barnum at the time had created so much confusion and disdain in people's heart and mind. It would not overwhelming feel like he was a loss. You understand?
As you rightly say, if Mandelbohr believe that things are inconsistent and irrelevant, all he has to do is put his comments and send it to the DPP for the DPP to deal with it. But no, he took up the role of the DPP and did something which is unconstitutional.